I want to put this wild ride in perspective for you because it's been a wild ride. My buddy Joe Cunningham, program director down in Lafayette at our affiliate there, he texted me last night and he said, I long for boring and precedented times. Instead of exciting and unprecedented, he wants boring and precedented times, and I completely agree. What a whirlwind. Only a few weeks ago, I was telling my team as I was coming in for show prep, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. There's no news. I gotta work harder. And these breaking news days actually make for a lazy show, or can, because there's so much, so overwhelming. You could just hit the beat, move on, hit the beat, move on, hit the beat, move on. It's a crazy time. 2 months ago, Donald Trump was found guilty of 34 counts in New York City in a criminal trial. Less than 1 month ago, he then stood on stage with Joe Biden at a debate, and Joe Biden's campaign ended, dead man walking. A week and a few days ago, Donald Trump was nearly assassinated. That Monday, a week ago today, Judge Eileen Cannon dismissed his classified documents case. Later that day, he named J.D. Vance his running mate. Only a few days ago, Donald Trump accepted the nomination of president for the Republicans. And yesterday, Joe Biden withdrew from the race for president. It's been a crazy 2 months. Greg Bluestein, reporter at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, put up a quote from Vladimir Lenin. There are decades when nothing happens, and there are weeks when decades happen. Lenin. It's true. It's a good quote. It's so true. I'm going to say it. I say it all the time. I've warned you. Events change things. Harold MacMillan owns the quote, not me. Harold MacMillan was Prime Minister of Great Britain in the 1950s. He is said to have been Elizabeth II's favorite prime minister because they loved to gossip together about members of the British Parliament. MacMillan knew all the dirt. MacMillan was in a very weird marriage. His wife, his entire marriage, slept around on him and rubbed his nose in the fact, but he loved her dearly. Harold MacMillan got swept into office, and he got swept into office with a wave of support for the Tories. And a young reporter asked him what could change things. And he said, events, dear boy, events. Events change things. A year ago, Donald Trump got indicted by Alvin Bragg in this case and went from being behind Ron DeSantis in expectations for a nomination to skyrocketing in Republican support and raised a massive amount of money. He got into this year, and his fundraising was off. It was down. He was trailing Joe Biden. 2 months ago, Donald Trump was found guilty in this criminal trial in New York, and his fundraising skyrocketed, so much so that in the very end of the second quarter of fundraising, Donald Trump raised so much money, he surpassed Joe Biden for all of the second quarter and is on track for historic fundraising for the third quarter. Fast forward a few weeks, he's on a debate stage with Joe Biden, and they have that famous clash. Joe Biden answers a question, and Donald Trump replies off the cuff, I don't know what he said, and I don't know that he knew what he said either. And that was the beginning of the end of Joe Biden's campaign. And for almost a month, 3.5 weeks, the Biden team has been convinced that they could hold on, convinced they could get another chance, convinced they could turn the corner. And every time Joe Biden tried, he said something else that reinforced the notion he needed to go, and his polling plummeted. And then a week and 2 days ago, an assassin nearly murdered Donald Trump. And it's amazing how we've moved on from that as if nothing really happened. In fact, Democrats have moved into their own conspiracy theories that for somehow or another, the Democrats believe that Donald Trump wasn't actually shot, or if he was shot, that he orchestrated the shooting himself. In fact, a third of Democrats believe that Donald Trump organized his own assassination attempt to help him politically. And we move from that to 2 days later, Judge Eileen Cannon dismissing the documents case, to that afternoon, him picking J.D. Vance as his running mate, to just a few days after that, him formally accepting the Republican nomination in a very long speech that in hindsight, I think even he would agree, could have been sharper, more precise, and anticipating a Biden dropout. And then Joe Biden says he's going nowhere. On Friday, Kamala Harris did a call with Democratic donors telling them Joe Biden was going nowhere and they needed to stick in it and they were going to beat Donald Trump. And the callers on the call said it was a ludicrous call. And while all of that was going on, Joe Biden's campaign was preparing detailed polling for him that shows neither he nor Kamala Harris are beating Donald Trump, but that Kamala Harris is doing better than Joe Biden in the polling. So he leaves. He drops out of the race. As an aside, if I were the CEO of CrowdStrike, I would be thanking God for this news cycle. Because on Friday, CrowdStrike issued a security patch globally that took out the internet from China to Europe to the United States, melting down airlines. Delta Airlines still struggling to recover. Companies all over the world, healthcare systems, hospitals, ATMs, banks, they all got taken out by CrowdStrike. And no one's talking about how a single company could take out the world's internet with a security upgrade, because we're talking about Joe Biden being shoved out the window by the Democrats. And as he falls to his political death, they praise him as the greatest president of all time. Splat. What a wild, wild turn of events. Events change things. And with events changing things, I want to say this to you. Don't take anything for granted. Events will still change things. Donald Trump. Now, I need you to hear me say this in its entirety, and it's not my own thought. Alex Castellanos, longtime Republican operative, strategist, consultant, who's a very smart guy. He made this point. I want to attribute it to him in case there's blowback and hate mail towards me, but it's a very smart point. This is Alex Castellanos' point. Donald Trump has never been closer to losing than at this moment. Doesn't mean he's going to lose. But Donald Trump was going to beat Joe Biden, and now there's a new candidate. And as Alex says, whom the gods would destroy, they would first make overconfident. Trump should still be expected to win the election. He has the advantage. Life was better and the world was safer for Americans when he was president than it has been under his opponent. And Kamala Harris isn't just Kamala Harris, but she's the Harris in the quote-unquote Biden-Harris administration. But if the Trump campaign gets overconfident now, they got out Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is a disaster, well, he could still lose. The Democrats do have a better ground game than the Republicans. The Republicans have largely outsourced their ground game to third parties like Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA, and the technology they're using isn't up to snuff. But people are getting rich. Events can change things. Don't get confident, Republicans. Don't get confident Democrats. In fact, if anything, Democrats, you should be really concerned because of Harris's track record. But both sides should be careful how they presume this will play out, because you couldn't have predicted the last 2 months. You can't predict the next 3 or 4. We're less than 100 days from all of this playing out with voting. Events change things. If I were a Republican or a Democratic politician, the thing that would still keep me up at night is the fear of a domestic terrorist attack. Not a domestic terrorist, but a terrorist domestically attacking us. We have arrested as a nation 8 men who came across the border illegally from Turkmenistan with ties to ISIS. They were plotting a terror attack in this country. 2 illegal aliens showed up at Quantico trying to break into the joint. Our enemies see the turmoil. So do the lone wolves. A 20-year-old with mental health issues, lone wolf, nearly killed Donald Trump, within a half inch of killing Donald Trump a week and 2 days ago. Events change things. I don't know how this will play out. Do I think that Kamala Harris is weaker than Joe Biden? I actually do think that Biden, despite all of his flaws, is a better candidate than Kamala Harris. Joe Biden is more empathetic, even as he's not the most empathetic as he claims. He has a more compelling background and biography. He was, however, a tragedy. Kamala Harris, her image is negative. She's got the opportunity to be reinvented by a media that will love her to stop Donald Trump, but the same media that lied about Joe Biden will lie about her. Their credibility is shot. Events change things. I don't know how this is going to play out. You don't know how this is going to play out. You can run to your conspiracy theories. You can run immediately to stolen election. You can learn to the illegals are going to steal it for Kamala. Whatever you want to run, you have no idea how this is going to play out. 2 months ago, Donald Trump was found guilty. A month ago, Joe Biden destroyed himself on a campaign stage. A week ago, Donald Trump was shot. A week and 2 days ago, he was shot. A week ago, Eileen Cannon threw that case out in Florida, and J.D. Vance was picked as the nominee. Less than a week ago, Donald Trump became formally the Republican nominee. A day ago, Joe Biden dropped out of the race. I have no idea what's going to happen. What an incredible time to be alive. Events change things, and the events just seem to be picking up steam. Buckle up. We still have a long way to go till November.